constitution. We were changing from an apartheid regime to a constitutional democracy. And what I noticed is that lawyers were at the forefront. You know, I noticed that Nelson Mandela himself was a lawyer, you know, Oliver Tambo, Walter Sisulu, all these people. Okay, I don't think Walter Sisulu was a lawyer, but there are many other people involved in the constitution making process that were lawyers. And in my own family, there were people that I knew who were advising and who were involved at that time from that legal capacity. So it showed me the usefulness of law in politics, in transforming our country, and I wanted to be a part of that. So that's what inspired law. It was a mix of this pop culture moment and with this real transformational moment that South Africa was going through, and these things were happening at the same time. And I knew that I wanted to have those skills to be able to either be in a courtroom or to be in a chamber somewhere where we're discussing reshaping our country.
And has the legal profession lived up to its hype for you? Like, did you get that same feeling that you got when you started out?
I did. I mean, I still do. In so many ways, I can make a modest case for why law matters and why wanting to be a lawyer is a virtuous thing. I've had those moments. You know, the number of cases I was involved in, especially like the last couple of years in my legal life, in my corporate legal life, you know, we were involved in a lot of transactions having to do between the private sector and the public sector. And again, those transactions were transformational, and our team was advising on the public law side of things. And it felt like, you know, I may not be in a courtroom, I'm not a showman like Marsha Clark was, but knowing that we were a part of these transactions was important. But also, you know, we were doing this stuff at the height of state capture. And some of the matters that we saw had a state capture element, and we're able to say, no, this is not right, or we can't even give an opinion on this because it shouldn't be happening. So in that way, you feel like you play your part in a modest way. Clerking at the Constitutional Court that entire year for me was living up to the hype. There is no job that I've had that's felt more important. You know, it felt more urgent than clerking at the court. And in that sense, law definitely lived up to the hype. And also when I started, you know, I started at a firm called Denise Rates, which is now Norton Rose. And the person that I worked for, Donald Dinney, he gave me so much responsibility. My first week on the job is like, I want this trial wrapped up in 6 months. So not only did it live up to the hype in terms of the profession, but just in empowering me, making me feel like a professional, making me feel like, you know, I have a point of view and I can shape things and I can run with things. In that way, it definitely lived up to the hype. But like with anything that lives up to the hype, there is a shadow side to it. So I can't deny that either, you know?
Yeah. And more than
I mean, Mr. Musagi, I worked with him in commercial litigation, and there were some great cases that we're a part of on behalf of banking institutions, and just the training I got from him. He's someone who's got such an attention for detail. And one story I'll tell is that when I was his CA, he has a, sorry Aslam, but I'm going to give away your secrets, but he has a way of testing, you know, the focus and the stamina of the person who's working for him. And I was in the middle of my test, and I kind of realized, I didn't know at the time it was a test. He was putting so much pressure on me, and I was able to say, can you slow down? Like, can you just stop for a minute? And he appreciated that, because I was able to advocate for myself and be like, hold on, like, I can't take all of this coming at me. Let's do this, let's slow down a little bit. But that pressure, it did help, because it is a part of the job. So
it's part of the shadow you're talking about, the pressure that comes with it.
Well, no, that part I enjoy. I enjoy the pressure, the work. The shadow are more the people. Some of the people that don't quite bring the right values to the job. And then in terms of the other shadow to it is that you can work on matters and put your heart into them and have them just collapse, or have them not sort of get to the point that you had hoped, you know, not getting the results that you want for your client, not getting the results you want for yourself. You know, most of the time I wanted to go to court because the questions were important, and then our clients would settle. And for me, that just didn't feel satisfying. Commercially, I understood it, but law sometimes can, I think in South Africa, we tend to overburden it. We tend to, it has an over-importance that in a normal society, it shouldn't have. And I think we require things from it that are not in the legal domain. For instance, I think like when we look at law politically in South Africa, is that we think through the law, we can make people love each other. They can't, you know, it can't make people trust each other. It can't get rid of corruption. It has consequences for corruption. It can't change people's hearts. So I think understanding the limits of law for me was the shadow side of it, because I'd looked at it, you know, I'd looked up to it as something that could really change our society, but it has to work with other things, with other disciplines. On its own, it's only going to get us meager results, important results, but they are not as, you know, they're not like these high hopes that I had growing up. I think it's just part of maturation, knowing the limits of law. And, you know, I've seen what law can do, especially in the Constitutional Court. There are matters that I can share with you where it was like, it was a slog for the litigants.
Guys, sorry, Lwando, guys, please mute yourself. So I'm sorry to interrupt. Please mute yourselves because there's interference coming through, and I really want to hear what Lwando has to say. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'd say that, you know, there are a number of landmark cases that either I've been a part of or have studied, and for me, they prove the case of the virtue of law. But even in those cases with those victories, right, it's like, it shouldn't have taken so long. It shouldn't have taken so much money and so many years and all of that, but we got the result. But nonetheless, so I'll also say this, I'm still connected to the court. I'm a trustee of the Constitutional Court Trust, and I'm part of the scholarship program that the court has. So I interview a lot of clerks for the scholarship program. We take care of the art collection and the building. So I'm still very much a part of that institution. And that's why I refer to it a lot. It's not just from my clerkship, which was years ago, but as you said, it was a transformational year because it was law and intentionality. Everything about that institution is intentional from the moment you walk in, from the building, you know, from the values that people try and live out, you know, from the person I clerked for, Justice Cameron, who is, I think, the best legal mind there is, but also the nicest person I've, you know, ever had the pleasure of working for in terms of inquiring about my family. You know, he understood that if my family is doing well, chances are I'm going to perform well at work. And the responsibility that we had, which is different from being a corporate lawyer, because now you're decision makers. So you find yourself in a position of lobbying, you know, for a particular cause, trying to get the votes inside, you know, the institution, enough votes for your outlook or your judgment, if you are the drafting chamber, to actually be the majority judgment. So there's a lot of investment, a lot of heart into it. And how I got to clerk at the court was unconventional because I didn't apply. What happened was a friend of mine was clerking for Justice Cameron. And in that year, I was actually doing my master's in constitutional and administrative law at UCT. And I had no ambitions of clerking for the court. I thought once I was done with my master's, I'd go back to Norton Rose and continue as an associate and get more experience. So during the holidays, the June holidays, I came back to Joburg, and my friend was telling me that Justice Cameron had picked a law clerk for the following year, but the Chief Justice decided that they want this person for themselves. So it left Cameron with no law clerk. and he didn't really want to start the process again, but he was looking for someone, right? And so his law clerks were making recommendations. So my friend had recommended me, and since I was up for the holidays, he wanted me to interview. I didn't have any of my sort of formal clothing. I had come with just jeans and t-shirts. So when I interviewed with Justice Cameron, it was a little bit unorthodox in my jeans and my t-shirts and sneakers. He got to see me as me and not putting on, you know, a facade. And we were able to have a really good conversation. And one of the questions that he asked me, 2 questions in the interview that he asked me is like, which case did I think the court had gotten wrong? And I was able to say the Masetla case, if you guys are aware of it, the DG of intelligence had been fired by Thabo Mbeki, and I thought the court had been wrong in not requiring that before someone is fired, you know, they should be given the opportunity to be heard. So I was able to criticize that judgment. And then he asked me, 10 years from now, where do you see yourself legally in your legal career? And he was sitting in front of me, and behind him was his desk. And I was able to point to his desk. I'm like, sitting over there, hopefully. And he kind of liked that answer. We hit it off, and he told me, okay, you're my law clerk for the following year. And that's how I got the job.
Amazing. Amazing. I want to talk to you about your book, and we'll move on to your book now. But clearly, like, your career you've taken the less beaten path, which is the theme of today's discussion. But why have you gone through this like sort of unorthodox way of going through your legal career? So I know that you studied overseas and you only did your master's after having been in practice before. Then you came back and you went to practice, and then you went to the Constitutional Court. And I know you're the founder of Including Society, and we'll talk about Including Society just now. And you've also written a book, and I know you've written articles for the Daily Maverick. But why? What drives you to try new things? Is it because you always have an interest in different areas and you think, you know, you can't just rely on one source one source of work for your fulfillment? I just want to get an understanding of what drives you to, you know, take the unusual path.
You know, when I was in grade 11, I went to Parktown Girls. So anyone who went to that school, hey, it's one of, I think it was such a definitive experience in my life, going to a girls' school, especially one like that, where you really believed you could be anything, right? It was such a nurturing, protective environment. And high school for me was the best 5 years of my life. People can't believe it, but it was absolutely the best time. And I remember in grade 11, the school made us take an aptitude test. I don't know if anyone on here has taken an aptitude test. So it's supposed to guide you professionally, give you some kind of idea of, based on the test, what you should be doing with your life. So we took the test, and mine came back with 2 things. It came back with law. I was like, yes, confirmed. I knew it since I was 12. Of course it says law. So it felt validating, because it was, some people have a desire to be something, but maybe when you take the test or you do the psychometrics or whatever it is, you don't have the makings of, according to these tests, which, you know, we can argue the validity of them. But for me, it validated my dreams. So that was important, that I have the makings of a lawyer beyond just my desire, right? And what my family and friends think. But it also said another thing. It said media. I had no idea what media was. I'm like, no one recognizes media as a career. Like, what in media should I be? That's very broad. I don't understand it. So I completely tossed it aside. But I grew up in a media environment because both of my parents work at the SABC. So I grew up in the news studios. I grew up watching generations being formed. I grew up in, you know, every set you can think of, I've been there, and I found media very tedious. It's like law in a way, that once you see how the sausage gets made, so beyond the O.J. Simpson trial, once you see the slog of law, you're like, oh my God, when you go to law schools, like, it's more tedious than the dramatics that people see as the end result, right? So media for me, I had seen the behind the scenes. I was like, it's not as glamorous as people think. It's tedious, and I'm not interested in it, and I don't understand what in media I'm supposed to be. So again, the tunnel vision. So when we had a conversation, I told you, I never had a professional adolescence. I didn't play around. I didn't date around. I discovered law at 12 and I was like this. I was married to it until I was like in my 30s, right? And now I'm like looking around and going,
oh my world.
Yes, and also your law degree enables you to do so much. But for me, then the unorthodox take, and maybe Aslav can attest to this, because I don't know how unconventional I am in terms of my legal career, but it's just a part of who I am. In whatever space I would be in, I could never be one thing. And I could never just do that one thing the way that other people expect me to do it. I'm a person who's multi-dimensional. I live in a country that has so much going on. I'm influenced by so much that for me, law was always going to be just a part of me, although it was going to be an outlook that I have on so many other things. So I think it's just my personality. I'm a curious person. I like doing a number of things. I like interdisciplinary kind of way of working that, my mom is in media and I can see through the conversations that we're having that there's an element of her archiving career that has affected my career because I have a historical outlook to law. It's informed by how it was made. I'm interested in how laws were made. Who was in the room? What was the impetus for this law? What were the conditions at the time? And for me, I can't just be given a law, apply it, and that's the end of my day. My curiosity is beyond that because I live in a very rich ecosystem and I'm interested in all of it. And I find that my interest in all these things informs my approach to the cases that I worked on, whether it's at the law firm or the constitutional court. I just want to live a vibrant life that is connected to the arts, connected to the medical field, connected to tech, connected to media. Why not? I just find that it's more exciting. If you're going to do a career for the rest of your life, you have to find things that give you an edge or keep you interested. And I think at a law firm, one of the things that helps is the new intake of CAs. Every time the CAs come in, I'd be ecstatic. I'd want to sit with them because obviously they're coming in with an energy that maybe I've lost. And I want that to rub off on me. Maybe they've got radical ideas. Our cohort of CAs, we were very entitled, or people told us we were entitled. I like that energy of entitlement if you're going to back it up with hard work. So the different generations that pass through a law firm give you energy, open your eyes to new things, makes you curious. And I think for me, I'm not just one thing. I have other talents outside of an analytical mind. I can write. I can own that I can write. I think in a different way, and I want to express that. So, yeah, it's a result of that. Having the confidence to say I'm not just one thing, because when you're starting out in law, you want law to be your only partner. You want this exclusive relationship, and you realize maybe we should be polyamorous. Life is more fun that way.
I love it, and that resonates with me so much, and that's why I asked you to join our session today, because a lot of the conversations I have about the mentees, they have that tunnel vision of, I'm graduating law, I'm gonna go work for a law firm, and maybe people who are adventurous then will join the bar. And the point of the session today is to just show all the mentees that you don't need to follow just one path within the legal profession.
There's a season for that, Rory. Let me say, there's a season.
Yes, for tunnel vision, definitely. I understand you do need to get great experience. You do need to have a tunnel vision for some, but it's only a limited point within your career, right? But I see now, for example, there are CAs, and I see them on LinkedIn, on Instagram, who have YouTube channels. Like, you can still do your articles of clerkship and still get your grounding, but still have outside interests. And I talk a lot about, how lawyers of the future are gonna have to be T-shaped. So you need to have your depth of knowledge of the law, but a broad understanding of various fields. Because as you alluded to, like, if you have different skill sets, then it just makes you a better lawyer. And I know historically people have, there's this term of being a jack of all trades and a master of none. And historically, doing different things, it seems like you have no focus or you won't be really great at it. And I don't believe in that mindset, and you clearly don't. So I think it's important to have different interests. Yes, definitely you do need to have like solid foundations and know your law properly, but that's not the only path to take.
You must try and be coherent. So the through line through all the different things I've done is the Constitution. It's constitutional law. That's the thing for me that's made it all coherent, right? And I want to say that an enabling environment for you to explore your other talents and sides is important. I was very spoiled by my first boss. Donald Dinny ruined me in a good way, in the sense that when you work for him, you have to write. Mm-hmm. There's an incentive in the team. You get paid. Okay, you get paid by the publication, but he'll let you know if you write for Without Prejudice every month, it's extra cash for you. But also in the team, we almost had this competition of we have to write. Mm. If I had landed up as my first rotational job in another department where the writing wasn't emphasized, I don't know if I would have found it, because when I started, it was also almost begrudgingly. I don't want to do it. As a CA, you have so much work, and now this person is telling you to write extracurricularly. It's like, no, I want to focus on the learning. I don't want to write, not realizing that the writing is the learning, and it's also professional development. It's getting your name out there. It's giving you a focus in terms of your writing, like trying to understand in what space do I want to provide commentary. So that requirement, even though in the beginning it was almost a command, I'm very grateful for that, because I realized that as a lawyer, having a writing ability, being able to talk about what it is that you do, not just do the work, are you able to go in the media and explain, provide commentary on other cases that have just been handed down? That's important for me. And that, I think it gives confidence to people that you know what you're talking about because of the writing. So that's important. Someone cultivated that out of me. It was there dormant, but I was given the space for it to flourish. And then the other important thing is I found constitutionalism as my focus, and it's become the through line, whether it's my work with government that I did for 2 years in the Public Sector Commission, whether it's my post-grad degrees, constitutionalism is at the core, whether it's my book that I wrote, you get a sense of that constitutionalism, whether it's including society today, the foundation is constitutionalism.
No, I 100% agree with you about the fact that you do need some sort of focus that will guide the path that you take, even though it's not going to be a conventional path. And you also alluded to like law being like a relationship. And I always say this to people that, it's like if you're dating someone and you expect someone to fulfill you 100%, you'll suffocate that person. And I feel like your profession is also like that. You can't expect to have a lot of money, flexibility, growth, room for further development, meeting clients if that's what you want. Like you can't expect to have all of that from one job, because it's like dating someone. They'll never fulfill you 100%. You need to have relationships with your friends. You need to have a romantic relationship. You need to have relationships with your siblings. And that's how you build a full self, right? And it's the same thing with a job. And I've found the side things that I do, like off council, for example, is a side thing. It puts pressure of my normal job, because then I don't go to my normal job and I expect it to fulfill me in the same way that this type of work does. So I think that's also something that maybe the mentees can take into account, the fact that, you can find fulfillment in some of the different things that you're doing, so that it takes the pressure of your 9 to 5.
Yeah, and never be in an environment where your profession is going to the reviews and the judgment you get from your job is almost where you get your validity as a person. Whether I did well or not in law, it wasn't going to be an indictment on who I am. So there was that space, right? If a rotation didn't go well, if a certain, if I ended up in a certain department where it didn't go well, my self-esteem was already at a good level based on how I was brought up, based on the reinforcements that I got at home, that a human being at work telling me I wasn't good enough I wasn't going to crumble because of that. Of course, it would be concerning, but it wasn't, the stakes for me weren't that high. And I'm glad. Maybe it was an awareness that I didn't have in terms of how much I should want this. You know, some people walk in really wanting it. I wanted my name on the letterhead, but it wasn't at all costs. And I told you that everything I do, and this could be misconstrued, is I do it with the door open. I can always walk out if I want to. And that's not in a non-committal sense. It's in a sense of I'm not desperate for my career. And I think desperation is the worst energy to have in anything that you do. Is that for me, there is a walking away point, you know, and sometimes people want a loyalty that I just don't have, or it's an old school type of loyalty where you have to give your firstborn son to, you know, whatever it is that you're doing. And for me, that was never the game for me, you know. There was a sense that if you as my employer also don't deliver, I'm going to be out of here because I have expectations of you as well. You know, the focus was always on CA performance and how you're doing, and, you know, and I think that you also have to flip it the other way around. I was fortunate that I worked for people who knew what they were doing and who were able to teach me. I don't care for people who are difficult. Difficult is fine. If you're teaching me, I can hang in there. But if you're going to be difficult and not teach me, what's the point? And also, I had zero tolerance for any kind of abuse. You know, when difficult has crossed the line to abuse. I was able to say, even as a CA, you will not talk to me like that. And that confidence came from how I was brought up and being able to articulate that even to my parents, you know? So I think that part of the advice I give is always with that context that I did have that privilege of walking in and knowing that if I have to, I can walk away, I will go back at home, but I'm not gonna be beholden to this. And I hate feeling beholden to anything. Anything that feels like it wants all of me is a complete put off for me. I can give my all to something, but when it feels like I'm only gonna be accepted here if I pledge my life to my career, I don't operate in that way. And to be honest, it's not something I particularly look up to, as it's not inspirational to me. People who have that sense of attachment to their careers, of being beholden, as if you were not a lawyer, would you know who you are? You know, when we were in the throes of lockdown and people were trying to find their footing and work wasn't as central, we're trying to figure out what's happening in the world. When work wasn't as central to your life, did you know who you were? Did you still feel a sense of value of who you were? That's important to me. That if it's all taken away, you know, if I'm fired, that my self-esteem is still intact. I know who I am.
But that's exactly why so many people then ended up having like mental issues during the lockdown, because they ended up, you know, they had placed so much value in who they were in their careers. But the one thing that you touched on, which I just want to spend some time on, is the leaving the door open when you're in a career and being able to walk away. And for me, that's why I believe that, you know, you should not just have tunnel vision about your career. You should consistently be trying different avenues so that you don't end up in the desperate situation that you're in. Like, I think, for example, writing, speaking, building your own brand outside of, let's say you're working for a law firm, leaving the door open. I'm getting comments here. People love that, leaving the door open. Like building your own brand, and I'm very much on building your own brand outside of your law firm. That is something valuable that will help you for your next step. And I talk a lot about the mentees about this, where people say, you know, they start looking for a job when they're desperate and they haven't created a brand for themselves outside of their law firm, or they wait till they're desperate, and you can't negotiate from a desperate point. We will continue this. I know we literally have like 1 minute before we get cut off. So I'm going to log off and log on again. Sorry, guys, we need to update to Zoom Pro, and we will for the next session. But we're going
to see you back. I have something to say about the walking away thing. There's a story I want to share.
Cool. We'll touch on that just now. Okay.